Today I'll show you how to rig a 3D character model in Maya. To start, just make sure you have a model of your choice to use in this tutorial, or you can just download the model that I'm using here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just go in this top corner and switch the workspace to rigging. And to get started, you need to go down here under the character drop down box and click create skeleton. Now, as you can see, this has created a skeleton, and this will be the base for our rig. So at this point, once you have the skeleton at the proper size for your model, at some points it won't be the proper size. What you can do is just play around with the scale. If it's too big, bring it up. If it's too small, bring it up to 2. If it's too small, just bring it down in like increments of 0.5 until it's a proper size. And then basically what you're going to want to do, and it's very useful to go into the 4 viewport mode so you can see a variety of perspectives, because in one perspective the joints might look like it's placed in the right way, but you might see that if you pan around that it's not really working in the same way. So to pan around in the scene to view the different joints, I'm just clicking Alt and the left mouse button. And this is really helpful for just making sure that I'm getting around and getting the joints in the right place. So to start, let's start with just placing the hips in the right place. So just click the hips here, and it also helps to bring down all of your joints so you can see them all. Because in addition to viewing them, just being able to click them and make sure that they're in the right spot is going to be really helpful. So I'm just clicking the hips and just bringing it up until I think it's around the right spot, and then you can just shift click to, so like just click this bone and then shift click on the other one to select both at the same time, so you can move them and make sure that your joints are being moved in a more even way. And yeah, just move them down. As you can see, that looks all good. It's in a good spot. I'm gonna move this down just a little bit more, just to make sure that those leg bones are looking good. And now we're gonna go to the knees. Alright, so for the knees, just shift click both of those legs and just try to place the joint where it would bend naturally. And that's the whole point, is just getting these bones that you're placing to follow the contour of the model. So we're gonna bring these feet down, as you can see, making sure they're looking good on all sides. And then you can just click these toe bones and just bring them up like that. And that's pretty much good. So now what we're going to want to do is just click this upper chest bone and just, bring that down. Gonna click the spine and bring that down a bit just to get those arms at a good level, and bring the neck up, and then bring this head bone to the middle. And as you can see, we've pretty much already got most of the rig in the right joints except for the arms. Now the arms and the fingers are the most tedious part of this. So what you're going to want to do is just select this, just move it out a bit, and then as you can see, the arm needs rotated down. So just click the rotation button here and just bring it down and just try to get it to follow the contour of the arm. As you can see, I probably brought that out a little too much. I'm just going to move that back a bit. And it's just a little bit of trial and error, just making sure that it looks all good. And now I'm going to select this left forearm here. I'll move it out so you can see it better. I'm going to select the left forearm and just rotate it so that it's following the natural contour of the arm. And now you can see that this hand here is kind of like it needs moved up. So what you're just gonna do is just click that and just bringing it up. And so I'm just trying to get this arm in the proper place, because You want all of the joints just to follow the body, because these joints where it bends, that's going to be like where the model bends, and you want it to move naturally. So I'm just gonna rotate that in more and bring this hand up a bit. So I would say that's looking good, except for the hand, because once we get the wrist in the right place, we're also going to have to move and rotate all those fingers into the proper spot. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the other arm. So just moving that up, just trying to make it as even as possible. So I'm just going to bend that out. Try to bend that back. And then selecting the forearm again and just getting it to follow the arm. And at first, I know it can be a bit difficult to move around the scene so much. But this is like how I'm comfortable doing it. You can feel free to use like the other viewports. Like this might be more easy for someone who's doing it the first time to be able to see it all in one place. But it's just all up for preference. So just gonna try to move that hand down a bit. I'm just making sure that it's following that arm very well. Okay, and now on to the fingers. And this is probably the most difficult part of the process, is getting these finger joints to follow the hand. So I'll start with the thumb. So as you can see, it's kind of like aimed downwards. So it's really just a process of trial and error here, of just trying to make sure that the thumb bone here is following the joints. So let's see what I can do to make this better. Just try to rotate that out a bit and just getting it to follow the contour of these hands is very important. And so let's try to move this in a bit and then rotate from here. And that's looking pretty good. So then let's try to go on to the fingers. To start with the fingers, what I like to do is just move the top joint into the proper place and then just rotate it at first just to get it in the right general spot. So just moving this finger over and just rotating it. And sometimes it can help to also look from underneath the hand as well, just to see how things are looking. So we want the start of these fingers to be more or less right here at the beginning of the finger. So I'm try to move this back a bit. And I know that rigging can seem like a very scary process. Like, you know, it's like, it's seen as something that's very difficult. And yes, it can be difficult, but the way that I will show you how to do it, once you get these joints in the right spot, it'll be very easy to get this working the proper way. So I'm just gonna move these back, just try to get it like the same length as the actual model fingers. Okay. So once we have it here, now it's just a process of just rotating these joints and moving them until, they're just following the natural contour of the fingers. So I'm just rotating this joint down. I'm going to click this middle joint and just rotate it down until it's following that finger. Now I know I'm kind of like rotating this freely for the fingers, and that's fine. But when you're placing like the joints for the legs, for example, like in the hips, try to not to rotate it very much at all because it can mess up the joint orientations and make your model not move in a natural way, which is not what we're trying to do here. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this. Just try to use like the move function less than a rotation for the other parts of the bones. So as you can see, like our hands here are pretty much in the right spot. I'm just gonna make sure that it's all good. I'm gonna move some stuff down. So, just looking at it from multiple angles, just making sure that there's no bones sticking out. You want them flush in the middle of the model. That's going to be the optimal way for the skinning method that we're going to use to work. So just make sure that, the bones are placed clean, concisely, that there isn't, a lot of, messy bone placement. Just try to make it as clean as possible. And now what we're basically going to do is repeat the same process that we did for this hand on the other one. And I know that it can be very tedious. I'm going to start from the bottom here just to make sure that I have the starts of my fingers in the right place. And although this is a very tedious process at some points, it is well worth it. You'll have your own custom model that you can use for animations, or you can use this as a character in one of your video games. Or just use it to like pose for renders. And so it is well worth learning how to do this. Alright, so these are looking good so far. So, oops. What I'm just going to do is do the same process where I'm moving these joints back just to have it at the proper length for this finger. It's just moving these back. Okay, so that's looking decently good. So then, just coming in from the side, making sure that the thumb is moving in the proper direction. Just getting it to follow how that thumb bends. Alright, so I'd say that that's looking pretty good for the thumb. So then let's start with the index finger here, like we did on the other model. Something looking strange, so I'm just going to try to fix that. I think it got bent in a not good way. But that's okay. And don't feel like you have to make this perfect the first time. If you find that your joints aren't really in the right spot after you skin the model, you can always go back and replace these joints and reskin the model. So if you find that you're not getting good results on your first try, just try to redo it. You can start with a fresh, unplaced skeleton, or you can try to go off what you've already done and try to repair it. So it don't feel like this is like the only chance that you'll get to make this rig good. So you'll see that. That's looking pretty good. So then let's go on to the middle finger here. So let's move that over a bit and just go from here and just rotate that down so that it's following this natural bend in the finger. Move that over a bit. Alright, so now we're going to do the ring finger. Just moving that. Seeing how there's a natural bend there, so I'm going to take this, go to the rotate tool, and just rotate it down like that. And you can see how that's looking pretty clean and following the bend of the model. And then last we have the pinky here. So we're going to bring this up because it's too far down. Bring that up. Just rotating that down. Move this over a bit. And so now what I'm going to do is just double check the rest of the model, make sure that everything's placed in the proper location, making sure that these feet are good, bend of the body looks good, spine is good. Might move the neck up just a little bit. And if you want to pan around the scene, what you can do is click Alt and the middle mouse button to do like that. And then, you know, the Alt and left click to scroll around like that. Okay, so once you make sure that your bones are all in the right place, what you're going to want to do is select the hips of your skeleton and then shift click select your geometry. And you're still in the rigging workspace at this point. So let me just go make sure I'm in rigging. Just gonna move this down a bit. What you're going to do is just go to select on the top toolbar, select hierarchy. So click that because that makes sure that the entire model and skeleton is selected. And then while you're still in the same workspace, you're going to go to skin up here at the top and go to bind skin. But don't click bind skin, click the option square right there on the next to it. And just make sure that your bind skin options match this exactly. You need bind to joint hierarchy. Very important that you keep geodesic voxel as the bind method and just the classic linear interactive distance to set this as your max influences. And also very important, set your resolution to 512 because that's going to make sure that you have a high quality rig. So once you have all of these options set, click bind skin. And it might take a few seconds or a minute just to bind the skin. So as you can see, here we go, and our model is rigged. So what you're going to want to do is just click your joints and just try to rotate them and see if they move the way they should. So the leg comes up. Yep, that's bending good. Now try it on the other leg. Just make sure that it's bending in the way that it should. So let's test the spine here. Yeah, that's looking good. Test your arms and your fingers. Check the fingers, make sure that those are bending in the right way, because you might find that it isn't always perfect. And what I mean by that is, for example, this index finger, it's bending part of the middle finger. And it's okay, don't panic if that happens. Just select your model and go back up to the top, skin, click paint skin weights and click the option box. And this will show all of your bones and the influences that it has over the model. So this white color means that the bone's influencing part of the model, and the black means that it's not influencing that. So we're going to scroll down to our left hand index and just zoom in. So basically what these options here with the paint operations, this means replace means that you're replacing the existing weights. If you're adding to the existing weights. If you're smoothing it, then you're just smoothing it out just to make sure that the bend is more natural. So if you set the value to 1, that means that you're going to get a 1 like that. If you set the value to 0, it's going to get rid of your weight paints. So like that. What we want to do is replace, and we're going to set our value to 0 and try to bring the radius down, because this is a tight spot and you don't want to accidentally erase the weight paints in the part of the finger there that you want it to influence. So just very carefully click and draw on the model. This is very similar to like if you're drawing in a paint program with your mouse. And just try to very carefully get the parts of the model that don't need to be influenced by that joint. So I'm just going to try to zoom in and rotate around and just get a good view of all of that influences on the middle finger, and just making sure that it's not there, because you don't want this to be moving the wrong part of the model. And I'm going to go to the left hand index too, and as you can see there's some other joint issues, and that's okay. You can just make sure the value is set to 0 still, and that your paint operation is set to replace, and just make sure you have the right size. Make sure it's not too big. I'm just carefully painting on there on the model until that looks good. And just making sure that this is all moving in the proper way. And if your model isn't moving in the right way, don't panic. Like I said, you can always go into this option at any point and adjust your paint weights. But make sure that you're doing it in your bind pose only, because if you're adjusting it while you're in the middle of an animation, it is going to make your model move very badly. And as you can see, that looks a lot better. It's still moving it a little bit, but it's not noticeable. So just, test the rest of your joints. Just make sure that your fingers are moving good. The thumb, the index, middle, and pinky. So that hand's good. Let's try rotating your hand. Yeah, that looks good. Rotating this, yep. So far the model is looking great. The last thing to check now is the head. So let's select the neck and try to rotate it. And as you can see, the face is getting deformed in a very unnatural and bad looking way. So we're going to select the model again and go to skin, paint skin weights, and we're going to scroll down and select our neck in this list of bones. And as you can see that the face is being influenced, but the reason why it's moving like that is because it needs more influence. So just click add on your paint operation, set your value to 1. And let's try to bring up the opacity a bit. And just bring up your radius if you need to. And just paint the entire head. Just make sure that it's a solid white. Because when you do this, just make sure that your model is moving all together and it's not getting that weird facial deformation that you don't want. You want it to move like a real face. So now that we're kind of getting to a smaller area, I'm going to bring down my radius a bit. And another thing to keep in mind with this model in particular is that it actually has teeth. And these teeth and eyes on the inside also need to be painted. So I scroll into the head like that. And I'm just going to try to rotate around in the head and get these weight paints on. Yeah, this process is, it's tedious. It's not necessarily fun, but once the model's working right, it'll be worth it. So I'm just gonna bring up my radius a bit as I'm doing this. Just try to get all of that teeth area solid white. I'm trying to zoom in, scroll around. You just want to make sure, because if you don't, it's going to be moving in a very poor way. And it's hard to get up in the parts of the teeth that you can't really see that well. So just try your best to get underneath this tongue area and just paint it. So I'm just panning around with the Alt and middle button to try to move around and make sure I have painted the parts of the model that need to be colored, because see, these edges here are still a little black. So now that we have that, let's just test it and see if we fixed it. And for the most part, we have. So as you can see, the face is not getting skewed in the wrong way. Just gonna try to move the head. But as you can see, I mean, if we move the head back, a bit of that teeth is kind of like still showing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move that back, go to skin, paint skin weights, and let's just try to get that painted white like it needs to be. And it can be a little tricky. I'm just gonna go to X-ray. Go back to this. So I'm just gonna try to bring up the radius a bit and see if I can get that to stop popping out. I'd say that's probably about the best we can make it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and more likely than not, we're not going to be moving our neck that far back anyways, so that's okay. So I mean, at this point, this model's pretty much good to go. And it's ready to be animated with motion capture data. Um, One last thing though, if you want to make sure that your rig is scaled down, because at this point it's huge, what you can do is create locator and put your rig inside this locator. Just press and hold down with the mouse button. Just put it inside that locator, and then select the locator and scale it. And this will make sure that your entire model is being scaled all at once. And you can bring it down to a more reasonable size. So this is looking good. So now the model isn't huge anymore. Here, I'll scale this up just a little bit more. So now it's like more or less the same size as the motion capture targets that you will animate with. So you can just delete that locator now, you don't really need it. And this is how you rig a model. And some last takeaways is, yeah, it's probably not going to be as easy as it looks the first time. You might have to redo your joint placements a few times. It might not always move the right way, so just keep in mind that it's okay. You can go back and you can paint the skin weights, keeping your... Remember, if you want to get rid of a skin influence, press replace on this operation on the right side and press your value to 0 to get rid of all that weight paint. And alternatively, if you want to add a weight paint, press add and do that. So that's how you can add and erase. And adjusting your radius is going to be very important too, because you don't want your weight paint to go onto a part of the model that you aren't trying to influence. So just keep in mind of the sizing, especially when you're editing things like the fingers. And I hope that this tutorial helps you understand like the rigging process in Maya and kind of makes it a little easier to understand and realize that it can be done very quickly. Thank you for watching.